Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hi, and welcome back.
So I got a new partner right next to me. We made the big trip into a town and got the oil change yesterday, and she got her hair done.
It's cute. I like a bob cut. Bob cut's fun, and it's easy.
It is cute, and it's kind of a different color, a little bit. And it's like, who's this? I don't know. I'll take her home. She's cute.
Yeah, I'll do.
So what we're looking at right here, Electroverse, is a big deal in some ways. And we're looking towards that December 21st date when we have the grand conjunction. And as you see here, Jupiter and Saturn are about to do something that has not been seen since 1226. And we touched on this with the interview with David Dubine over at DAP 2030 we did a couple days ago. Fascinating times we are in.
I know, and these two opposing gas giants are going to exchange energies, and it's going to be absolutely awesome.
You know, as we had mentioned before, if you look at, and I think everybody is, well, a lot of people are thinking about the Stanley Kubrick film now, A Space Odyssey, right? 2001, and then the sequel 2010. And when Cindy just said gas giant, well, what can you do with gas? Well, you could ignite it.
Oh, boy.
And not that they're going to ignite when they get close together, although some have also thought that this may very well be the Star of Bethlehem that we talked about. And we got the legends there's so many legends out there we got to delve into a little bit deeper again. It's time. Saturn, when Saturn ruled, and it was the age of Saturn, and perhaps Saturn was a star. I mean, again, our science is so ever-changing. I went and looked at life cycles of a star, maybe about 3 years ago, and it confounded me because everything that I was taught growing up, going through school, was totally changed now as far as the way a star's life cycle happens. And we've seen the changes in our sun. It doesn't look the same as it did 20 years ago.
Oh, no, definitely not. I look up and I see it's white many times.
Yeah, and then sometimes we get this bluish tint,
Yeah.
and then the bluish might be the next stage.
Yeah, and they tell us that everything's normal, nothing has changed, and nothing is really changing. Oh, with the exception of the cosmic rays.
So this rare occurrence is going to happen after sunset on the solstice, winter solstice, December 21st, 2020. And alignments between these two planets are rather rare. They occur once every 20 years or so. But this conjunction is exceptionally rare because of how close the planets will appear to one another. You'd have to go all the way back to just before dawn on March 4th, 1226, to see a closer alignment between these objects in the visible sky. And as Robert Felix mentions in his book, Not by Fire but by Ice, which I finished a couple weeks ago, according to the studies by Rhodes W. Fairbridge and John E. Sanders of Columbia University, these alignments cause what is known as the solar retrograde cycle. This cycle involves changes in both the solar spin rate and solar output. Solar output declines abruptly. Ooh, that sounds cold. The retrograde motion itself is produced by the gravitational pull of the planets, primarily Saturn and Jupiter. When Saturn and Jupiter are both in the same quadrant of the solar system, they exert a greater pull on the Sun. The cycle is undeniable. Solar cyclicity must now be considered as being a fact of life, says the two professors emeritus. So that is interesting, we're talking about little ice ages and, how deep is it going to go? And the bottom line, like David says, we really don't know. We don't know if we're looking at something Maunder-ish, which caused a lot of destruction and death. And, again, with the revisionist history, it might have been as many as 25% of the people didn't make it through. Other cycles were much, much worse. And we're going to look at some major things here in this particular video, and they're just coming out with new discoveries all the time. So the sun can definitely affect our weather, that's for sure. It's the prime generator of everything on this planet when you get down to it. And of course the gas giants can affect the sun as well.
Well, they can. And another thing that's expected to occur is there could be like earthquakes happening before, during, and slightly after, because when these energies oppose or meet each other, those energies then come to Earth, and that can be pretty amazing.
And we talked about with David, um, how often bigger cataclysms happen, because there's some things that just don't add up, and perhaps they happen way more rapidly. As now all of a sudden, it's gotten to be a buzz topic is the mud flood idea and Tartaria. And why do we have these maps that show California as like islands? And, there is evidence, as we shared. We, bought a property in Nevada, right on the California border, and we found sponges and we found shells and coral. And it doesn't look like it's millions of years old. Hell no. I mean, I might buy a few 100 years old, maybe 400 years old, but there's no way. And then what's coral doing, 370 miles or so from the coast at, 2,700 feet altitude?
I know, not only that, but you said you could actually smell the beach.
You could smell it too. I mean, it still had that beach smell. And, there are Native American legends that talk about, there was water there. I believe there was water there. I've gotten these flashes. Like, sometimes I'll go into a little bit of a trance if I'm just sort of like staring out. And I was staring out at that area. And yeah, I mean, I saw a sea. There was a sea there. I could see it. I could like smell it, almost taste it, and I don't think it was any more than about 400 years ago. And so continuing this article, previously I mentioned the Little Ice Age, which began in the early 1600s, about 400 years ago. What I didn't mention is that Little Ice Ages reoccur in cycles. So, that is it. It's all about these cycles. Cycles caused by the sun's retrograde or clockwise motion around the center of mass, the barycenter of the solar system, called the solar retrograde cycle. This cycle involves changes in both solar spin rate and solar output. And again, when Saturn and Jupiter, that's going to make a new super planet called Supiter. I think I need a second cup of coffee. When Saturn and Jupiter are both in the same quadrant of the solar system, they exert a greater pull on the sun, and the cycle is undeniable. Oh, there's going to be some major changes coming in, guys. There's major changes coming in, and in many ways, geopolitical as well. I mean, that's obvious. We're seeing it. And, the weather is crazy, as we have seen, and it's going to keep intensifying. The storms are getting stronger. And here we have a supervolcano caldera found in Alaska. And when we go through this article, they're talking about, you see here, these 4, quote unquote, mountains, island mountains, actually consist of 6 stratovolcanoes, but they're thinking that in the Aleutians here, what we really might have is really these are all tied into the same magma flow, and what we're really looking at is a supervolcano, very, very similar to Yellowstone.
Oh my, and then didn't we just have last week about 5 volcanoes kind of pop off?
There was 40 going off at one time. Yeah, it's getting busy.
It really is. I mean, wow.
And then how about when we have this alignment again?
Oh, I know.
So big things may be coming, as this island chain may very well be part of a mega caldera the size of Yellowstone. And of course, the eruptions that can occur, like we've seen in the past at Yellowstone, you see the extent of these things. That they cover about half to 2/3 of the country, and will affect the entire northern hemisphere.
Oh boy, will they.
And then Long Valley, as well. Long Valley is not something to sneeze at, as it is perhaps about 2/3 the potency of Yellowstone. And I have a sneaking suspicion that the plume that feeds Long Valley, as the way that the drift is of this plate, this continental plate that we have here, I think it might be right under the area that's always swarming in Tonopah. I wouldn't doubt it. And so, any way you look at it, anything like that happens, then we all got to head to South America, to Africa, to Australia, and to New Zealand.
Yeah, hopefully we could get there in time.
Or maybe Fiji.
Okay.
Yeah. Although that would scare her because she doesn't like islands. No, she'd be terrified of islands. And we're talking about things getting more and more common. And we have Bombogenesis again. This bomb cyclone, first nor'easter of the season, blasts New England. And yeah, hundreds of thousands without power. And, it's just what we have in these times. And these are always fun storms for anybody that's up there in New England. And spent the first 40 years of my life up there. And I do remember some big ones coming in. And I would always love to go down to the beach and just watch the waves and the snow coming down. Then I had a little Jeep that would go flying around in. It was so much fun.
That does sound like a lot of fun.
So we do have a bombogenesis that happened. And the rapid deepening of low pressure is called bombogenesis, and is what we call a bomb cyclone. Now, with the algorithms, we have to watch out just putting that BOMB thing in there because it automatically flips it, So, we have to be so careful with the way we word things. So it's just basically a rapid deepening of low pressure, which gives you an intensification process. And the rapid intensification of storms has been something that we've seen in general. How many times have we seen a tropical storm now turn into a Category 4 or 5 hurricane?
Well, over and over and over again, poor Louisiana.
Yeah, in Central America, they got hit with some massive ones this year. These people are still reeling right now. All across New England, lots of snow, and some highways got basically shut down, as you see here. In Maine, you had power outages topping 210,000 people without power, and New Hampshire reached nearly 60,000 outages. For me personally, after having one, I would not do without a wood stove. I want a wood stove. That's like so high on my list when we do get settled in. Because they throw heat so well and you could cook on them, as opposed to having a fireplace. Fireplace is beautiful and all, but in general, it doesn't throw the heat that a wood stove does, and you can't necessarily as easily utilize it to cook in. So as you see here, New England state's battered by winter storm, power outages, perilous roads, and boy, to me that looks like what I remember growing up with. And I do remember in 78 we had back-to-back storms that were over 20 inches. And I remember the snow being, higher than my head.
Oh, I know. And that looks like when I was little trumping through the woods. It was great.
How about Beirut? Look at this. We got sleet and hail and just burying cars. And somehow it looks like this car's rear end, I don't know if it was just maybe flowing in it like it's a river, because it looks like it's lifted up and into this one. How did that happen? But crazy. And 2020 is definitely also the year of extreme weather. So this is a historical storm. And this happened to the capital of Beirut. And this is where they had that horrible blast of whatever it was. Remember? That was intense. So a dramatic hailstorm buried the capital in up to 3 feet of ice for several hours during the day. And there's video there for you guys to check out if you're so inclined. 50 millimeters of rainfall in 25 minutes. That's enormous, but that's part of what we're going to have. And you could see a supercell thunderstorm hit, and it went from 21 Celsius to 13.5 Celsius in just minutes. Oh, everything feels very much like we're heading into that day after tomorrow type of world, And by the way, the Bond fire is now about 50% contained, and this one in California burned about 7,500 acres. So we still have, sporadic fires that have been popping up as well. And this also we were talking about with David. Lost islands beneath the North Sea survived a mega tsunami 8,000 years ago. And like David was saying, nobody talks about this event that happened 8,000 years ago. It was a mega tsunami that inundated this area here in the North Sea. And that gets me thinking about Edgar Cayce when he says that Northern Europe is going to be changed in a twinkling of an eye.
Right. I could imagine that.
So, they're wondering about, again, ice sheets. Was it caused by a collapse of an ice sheet? Something along those lines. We see tremendous change both in the Arctic and Antarctic. The Arctic seaways now are opening up such that, there's much more exploration going on. The Russians have, many, many more ships up there and utilizing the natural resources that are up there and kind of laying claim to it more than anybody else. But everything is changing so rapidly. At some point, that is a real possibility, and again, the data, though, is so conflictory at the same time, depending on, who's giving it to you.
Right. I mean, did it really happen 8,000 years ago? We're just not sure.
So some ancient islands now submerged beneath the North Sea survived a devastating tsunami about 8,000 years ago, may have played a key part in Britain's human prehistory, according to a new study. The research suggests some parts of the ancient plain known as Doggerland, which connected Great Britain with the Netherlands. So there was a plain there connecting Great Britain with the Netherlands, withstood the massive Storegga tsunami that submerged most of the region about 6200 BC. The so-called Storegga tsunami was caused by the underwater collapse of part of Norway's continental shelf, about 500 miles to the north. Scientists had long thought the towering wave entirely submerged the Doggerland region between the east coast of England and the European continent. And, that gets you thinking, too. Continental shelf collapsing, that's pretty scary. How fast can something like that happen? There's cities all along our coastlines, because at one time the sea was much, much lower than it is now. And like right now, half the world's population is right along the coasts. So major events happen rapidly, and then these cities get buried, and then half the population is either fleeing or they're buried.
Yeah, I know. It's really, really interesting and strange how they... I don't know if it's so long in between, though. Is it 8,000 years between all these thousands? And it could be hundreds of years. We don't know.
It could be instantaneous,
Yeah.
perhaps, So the new research based on submerged sediment cores sampled during ship expeditions in the North Sea suggests that some parts of Doggerland survived the ancient tsunami and may have remained inhabited by Stone Age humans for thousands of years. And if they did, the surviving islands of Doggerland might have played a part in the later development of Britain, such as the introduction of agriculture about 1,000 years later. If you were standing on some of that coastline on the day that happened, it would have been a bad day for you. That's a big statement right there. But it didn't necessarily mean it was the end of that particular land. And, so all this, there was a plane is what we're talking about, and just gone, and then that makes us think of Atlantis. Now, and it also makes us think of a lot of the Norse and German stories of, the beings that come from way up north, the gods. Again, this is something else we could get into in depth. So we've had a lot of major catastrophes through time. We're talking about 400-year cycles. We're talking about this one that happened 8,000 years ago. Of course, we had the big one, the Younger Dryas. As you see what they're showing right here. This was all filled in. And so, you could go on a hike and go, across that area. And amazing to think about that and what changes are in store for us. Time will tell, but they might come pretty rapidly. And, here we get that the Alps are growing taller. However, some spots are shrinking due to erosion. But on the whole, they say they're getting 25 feet every 1,000 years. But is it really every 1,000 years again? I don't believe their timelines.
I don't believe their timelines at all either.
No, I think that there's rapid changes, much like Hapgood and Velikovsky had talked about. And the evidence is for rapid changes.
It definitely is, yeah.
So, guys, I want to thank you so much for your support. And thank all our members over at Patreon and also those that are helping at Ko-Fi. We couldn't do it without you guys. Stay prepared. Who knows what tomorrow will bring. But also stay positive and keep sending those good vibrations and prayers out there for everybody that's going through these changing times. As always, God bless and namaste.
God bless and namaste.